Tonight, a former top official in the Clinton Justice Department joins us to talk about a major new development in the Russia probe. It could be the linchpin of Mueller's case. Then, are we headed for another shutdown? I'm not kidding here. The deadline is just 2 days away, and I hear all the words, but the president, he's giving mixed signals tonight. We have got the very latest. Also, more and more Democrats, seemingly by the day, are jumping into the presidential race. But what do voters actually want? Are they looking for competency here, or somebody who's going to pass a purity test? We'll examine the field and try to get into the heads of the electorate. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks for joining us tonight. And we begin with a Russia probe. Senator Richard Burr, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he says mission accomplished, nothing to see here. Take a listen.
I'm not sure how to put it any clearer than I said it before. We have no factual evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
Now, even if you say, hey, technically maybe you haven't seen it yet, nonetheless, it sure gave the impression as if nothing to see here. Senator Mark Warner, though, the ranking Democrat on the same committee, who, by the way, has had a very good working relationship with the chair, he took a much different position, saying this: respectfully, I disagree. I'm not going to get into any conclusions I've reached because my basis of this has been that I'm not going to reach any conclusion until we finish the investigation. And we still have a number of key witnesses to come back. As I said, this is a bit unusual, as unlike the House, we have seen largely bipartisan cooperation in that Senate committee. Then there is the information we continue to learn from court records of a recent closed hearing. Now, it talks about a meeting between Paul Manafort and a Russian political operative named Konstantin Kilimnik. Now, the Post, they're digging into this story with really great reporting. Another quote from their piece: it was at that meeting that prosecutors believe that Manafort and Kilimnik may have exchanged key information relevant to Russia and the Trump presidential bid. The encounter goes very much to the heart of what the special counsel's office is investigating. Prosecutor Andrew Weissman, he told the federal judge in a sealed hearing just that last week. Harry Litman, he's a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. He was appointed by President Clinton. He's also a former federal prosecutor as well. Hey, Harry, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, get to that, because in that meeting, in addition to Manafort and Kilimnik, was also Gates. It seems that all three men had all something to gain here, including self-enrichment and also advancing Russian interests. And I mean, and even the details of the story, where they all took great pains to go in three separate exits at the end of the meeting. And then what transpired after, the positions the president took, with changing the platform here at the convention, president speaking as if there was a giant Russian constituency in the electorate in 2016, taking up for Putin at every single turn. It seems to have, at least this meeting, give a little bit of connective tissue to a lot of suspicions, but it put three men, if you will, all in the same room.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of connective tissue. And remember, this is in the middle of the campaign, when a campaign manager, which Manafort is, tends to have a lot to do. So he goes a few blocks, has this big meeting after having heard from a Russian contact. There's some dispute about who it is, about the same person who had given him the black caviar, whatever that might turn out to be, and then lies about it, frankly and flatly lies about it, and tries to tell the court, oh, I just forgot some of the details. So the lying about it, that key detail about their leaving separately, Gates apparently, the judge says, said that it was at that meeting that Manafort gave the polling information. This is not a social encounter, and it's one that certainly goes to the heart of Russia's interests about a peace plan in the Crimea that would really be a rollover for them, possibly easing of sanctions. And then, as you say, on the Gates, Manafort, Flynn, Trump side, it's all about personal pecuniary gain. They each have millions of dollars that they stand to realize from this kind of service of the Russian national interests, and I think that's the theory that Mueller is pursuing.
You mentioned the lying, and that has been another commonality through all this. Everybody lied about these meetings, even Flynn. And Flynn, you would think, certainly in his position at the time, he had every right to be talking to foreign nationals, including Russians. But even he lied about this. Clearly, without any debate, nobody wanted to admit to these conversations, let alone the subject of it. That's telling in its own right, isn't it?
I really think it is. Flynn lies to FBI agents. He has to know better. He's caught up. He has some reason not to lie because he's in effect an unregistered foreign agent. But certainly someone of his service and sophistication knows the jig is up and he's got to come clean. So I think it's more than just casual, or Mueller is certainly understandably pursuing the theory that it's more than just some kind of preliminary diplomatic outreach in anticipation of the change of administrations. People are looking to feather their own nests here. That's why they lie about it, hide things, go out by different exits, have losses of memory, and the like.
You know, I want to remind everybody one of those famous lines from All the President's Men. This the exchange between Deep Throat and Bob Woodward, obviously played by Robert Redford.
Forget the myths that the media's created about the White House. The truth is, these are not very bright guys, and things got out of hand.
Hunt's come in from the cold. Supposedly he's got a lawyer with $25,000 in a brown paper bag.
Follow the money.
You know what? As silly as it sounds, Harry, it rings so true. These are not very bright guys. Follow the money. It may not be more complicated than that. Everybody either was in the hole, they wanted a tower built, they wanted money in their pocket here. This is about potentially simple greed. People wanted to make a few bucks, and they needed Russia to get there. I know I'm oversimplifying things, but at the end of the day, could it really be about the almighty buck?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and it's an old story. I don't think it is so, oversimplifying. It certainly is the motivation of many a white-collar crime that's happening today, next week, and last week. But the scandalous part of it, I mean, that itself is scandalous, but remember, what they're trading, the way they are enriching themselves, is by potentially giving a tremendous goodie basket to the Russians to elevate Putin's role in the world, to diminish the influence of NATO, to potentially give a sweetheart arrangement in Crimea against our national interests. That's why a counterintelligence investigation winds up, operating. It's not just the corruption of making money. It's the making money in exchange for essentially the selling out of U.S. interests. Russia's interests are pretty plain. That's their regular national interests. On the other side are people's private financial interests that are unrevealed to the American public, at a time when they're voting on the election. And you have candidate Trump saying very weird things about Crimea and NATO and the change in the platform. That gives an extra and more troublesome gloss, it seems to me.
We've mentioned the name Harry Andrew Weissman for a few folks. He's not an ancillary figure. He was a major player, and for people who followed his MO, he takes no prisoners, including historically even going after family members of potential targets. We've been hearing a lot that Donnie Jr. might be the next one to get the indictment. Apparently, even he is talking out loud about it. Would that surprise you in any way if this could now go directly to the Trump family?
No, it wouldn't surprise me, and I think it's very much caught up in questions of timing. That is, I think Mueller and Weissman understand that to prosecute Trump Jr. or Kushner, potentially even Ivanka, is a real declaration of war that will make Trump, President Trump, go wig out with whatever that means. But Trump Jr. in particular seems to have to be virtually dead to rights for lies to Congress, conduct that at the time people like Michael Cohen thought was no real problem, just kind of like a little fib between friends, and the Republican committee would let people take a pass. It hadn't been prosecuted much, now it is. So I think he is in trouble there. On the Weissman side, look, he's very, very good. That's the number one thing about Weissman. Yeah, he's aggressive, but by all accounts, and I know him a little, he's also, you know, he's not ruthless. But he's an aggressive prosecutor. Probably represents the sort of aggressive flank in the debates within the Mueller office. And as you say, he was the spokesperson, the stand-up person in the Manafort hearing last week in front of Judge Jackson. So he probably has the biggest operational role in the whole probe, and he is very aggressive. But he wouldn't have that role if Mueller didn't have full confidence in his essential integrity.
Harry, a couple quick questions, because at the end, the fate of the president will be decided in all likely politically as to the appetite on the Hill. First off, with what Congress laid out yesterday, Democrats, now that they've got the gavel, they could be busy for the next year with some of the probes they're doing. And at the heart of it seems they want to get to whether money was laundered directly by the president through any of the various entities, et cetera. How much will the Nadlers and the Cummings and the Schiffs, how much will they work in conjunction with Mueller, or are they going off on their own here and saying, we don't know the document that Mueller is going to produce, we're not waiting for it, we're going to make our own compelling case?
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty clear they're going to work with them a lot. They just yesterday hired a couple really seasoned and experienced D.C. hands to help here. And they're a very talented crew, those three in particular. The problem is they're less powerful than people think. Yeah, they have subpoena power, but to enforce it could be, you know, 2-year-long court battles during which the Congress itself ceases to be. It's not going to be easy, and I think the Whitaker hearing last Friday signaled that the executive branch is not just going to produce things for them. So I think they'll work closely with, and I think they're very good, but their ability to make dramatic inroads is, I think, a fair bit less than people assume.
Finally, Harry, listen, the House Intelligence Committee was a joke the last couple of years, especially Devin Nunes being the head clown. That's my personal take. But anyway, we had some at least faith, though, when we looked at the Senate and we saw both Burr and Warner on a bipartisan manner for the most part, at least singing the same song. Two very different takes on whether they've seen any evidence of collusion or not. What was your takeaway from that? Are we reading too much into two sound bites here? Or, especially if there'll be a vote one day, does that give you any troubling signs that Burr doesn't really want to go there?
Yeah, I think so. I was surprised. And remember, people don't always take stock of this. Burr was really involved on the, in 2016 in the campaign as a sort of spokesperson. You're right. They have this bipartisan tradition, and it's so patently clear that the facts are not all in, both with Mueller and with them. So why he would come out and say it, it seems both factually wrong and irresponsible, frankly. So I wasn't surprised with the pushback, but reading the broader political tea leaves, I agree with everything that's come out in the last few months and all that is portended. The fact that he would come out now and basically say, move along, folks, nothing here, I do think suggests that he won't have the appetite to vote to convict should a case ever be brought before the Senate. And if he doesn't, that's a pretty important sign. They would need, quite a number of the Burrs of this world to even think about a conviction.
Harry, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure.
All right, everybody. When we come back, the clock, believe it or not, is still ticking. We're just 2 days away from another government shutdown. Now, everybody says the president's going to be on board with this, but I haven't heard him say that. We're going to talk about the scramble going on to get a bill to the floor for a vote, and the president, as he's all over the place on this. We got the very latest with ABC News political director Rick Klein. Straight ahead.